All right, we're officially recording. Welcome everyone
All right.
to Virtual Closeness. Everyone say hi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hi,
Krishna.
Bo.
I think
Hare
everyone-
Krishna. Is everyone feeling virtually close?
Yes, sir.
This is much better than Skype, let me tell you.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Well, this is as good as we can expect for right now, being far apart from one another. But, you know, it kind of works for me because this is all I have right now. So, but I get to see you and we get to talk with one another. So, as usual, stop me at any time with questions or comments. So we're going to talk about it's time for a revolution. So where did I get this? Let me take you back to last episode. Last episode, we did Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Verse 10. And that was as follows. This is Narada Muni speaking. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So today, I want to do the very next verse. First Canto, Chapter 5, Text 11. And you'll see where I got the idea for the title. Narada Muni says, I'll do the Sanskrit first. Tad yagvisharo jana Dhagaha viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadhavati api namam yadnash tasya yaso niktani yat srinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhavaha. Excuse me. Translation, Narada Muni says, on the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Huge verse, huh? Yeah, he was saying that if these literatures, which don't describe the glories, the name, and the form, attributes of the Supreme Lord, this is like a dirty place. It attracts creatures that are attracted to dirty things, like the crows. The crows like to go where there's garbage, pick through the garbage. So it's likened unto a place of pilgrimage for crows, because it's dirty thought matter. Typically, it's sensual, some type of a sensual pursuit. And so unclean subject matters attract unclean minds. And so people will, of crow-like mentality, will be attracted to literatures like that. Then he says, on the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Lord, is a different creation. Different in that it's opposite. You see? You can see he's talking about total opposites here. One set of literatures has nothing to do with the subject matter of God. Another set of literatures has everything to do with the subject matters of God. So Narada Muni says it's a different creation. It's like night and day. It's like, I just noticed this background that Govinda Madhava has. Where is that? Is that Puerto Rico? You guys look like you're in Puerto Rico. So we're talking about the opposite. So the opposite of these low-class literatures, they attract the all saintly persons. Narada Muni says, it's a different creation. It's full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. So that's what we have right now. We have a world full of people that are having impious lives. You see, it's a misdirected civilization in that it's simply struggling for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And how can we do more of or better at these topics, these subject matters? Everyone is looking for a better situation. Because everyone's looking for a better situation materially, we can see there's no gratitude in what they had. Because they're thinking, even though America is in such a good place, materially speaking, everyone here is still looking for something better. They're not They're not. Wait a minute, am I muted?
You're good. You went out.
I did? Oh.
Yeah, it was Rada. She did it. She did it by mistake.
I did it by mistake. I'm sorry.
I cut out for a second.
She probably did it on purpose.
She probably did.
No, I didn't.
You can keep the backgrounds if you shove her out of frame again.
Good point.
Oh boy,
No, I'm just kidding. Stay on.
not a bad idea. No, just kidding, just kidding. Put that smile back.
So we on.
There you go. Put that smile back on, Radha Sundari. There we go. That's what we like to see.
What's the verse that we're presently on, Gurudev?
We're on First Canto, Chapter 5, Text 11. If you can put that on, I'm going to read the purport. So Narada Muni is saying that I'm trying to find my place here. These literatures which do describe the name, forms, attributes, activities, etc. of the Supreme Lord are full of transcendental words. Why are these words transcendental? Because they describe Krishna. They describe Krishna and his devotees. They describe the spiritual world. Therefore, transcendental, not material. Whereas the mundane subject matters are mundane. There's nothing auspicious. We've talked about this before. There may be some things that we can learn from those words, and we might get some entertainment. I think Dr. Freddy was pointing out Sunday that we may get some entertainment or some realization materially from some poetic words. You know, they may, or we may learn how to build a car or how to pay our taxes, or we may learn some different things by mundane literatures. And so to a certain degree, we need a certain amount of that. Hey, there's Bob. Hey. Good to see you, Bob. So we do. We need some mundane. We have to know sometimes. For instance, if you're going to build a tiny house, you have to read a lot of mundane literature to build a tiny house. But if that tiny house is going to turn out to be a place where your deities are going to live, then that mundane literature has just become transcendentalized. You see, so a devotee may learn something that we might consider mundane. However, if he's going to use it in the service of Krishna, then it's not mundane. Does that make any sense? Does everyone understand that you've transcendentalized the subject matter? And so for someone else, it might be a mundane activity. For the devotee, he's taking mundane subject matter and transcendentalizing it because he's going to use it in the service of the Lord and or the Lord's devotees. So Narada Muni uses some interesting words here. These types of literatures that talk about Krishna and his name forms and pastimes are full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Therefore, you can see these are like the words in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are like these words are like ammunition that we use in this revolution. Who is the revolution against? It's not against anybody. It's for everyone. It's a revolution for you. We want to give enough information about Krishna and Krishna's different names, forms, pastimes, activities, and philosophy. We want to get you close enough to Krishna to where you develop an attraction. As you develop an attraction, you'll start to feed on these words and this subject matter, and this philosophy. As you do that, it pushes out the mundane. And even if you, as I pointed out, even if you do need some mundane literature, you're going to consult that mundane literature simply for the purpose of helping you in your service. You see? So, in other words, you and everything that you're touching around you becomes transcendentalized when you're trying to serve Guru and Krishna. So, does that make any sense? Any comments before I go on?
Yes, I have something to say.
Please.
I've noticed that when people try to transcendentalize something, they miss that, in the secular sense, they miss the key of Krishna and this Krishna consciousness. That's what makes it transcendental. So all this other stuff that in name only is transcendental is just entertainment or mystic yoga or some kind of other mundane thing.
Yeah, because they're actually they're still in the mundane consciousness. You see, even in their pursuit of spiritual life, quote unquote, there is some mundane, although it may be pious, there is some mundane objective. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to throw money in the plate, or I'm going to go to the temple and throw money in the hundi, and I'm going to do some pious works. And then for that, I'm going to get some goodies. I'll get daily bread. I'll get some pious karma, you see. So that, whereas it is pious, is still influenced by mundane thought, because I'm really looking out for my self-interest, you see. Whereas the devotee, first of all, somewhere along the way, the devotee gets to feeling okay with himself and his position with God. So he feels secure and tremendous gratitude that the Lord is giving him this consciousness. The Lord is giving himself through studying his activities, his names, his forms, through these literatures that we're talking about, through the Shastra. So the devotee becomes tremendously grateful, satisfied, you see.
Mhm.
So then he can, once he's in such a position of gratitude and satisfaction, then he doesn't have to have any self-interest. You see, the self-interest is already taken care of. I don't have to worry about going out and taking care of myself, seeing that I'm looked after properly. You see, after a certain point, a certain level of advancement in Krishna consciousness, we become secure in our relationship with Krishna. We become secure in our understanding of ourselves, you see. So once that's taken care of, I don't have to compete with everyone else, and I don't have to put myself in the foreground of everything that I do. That is mundane. And it's a hard thing because we've been doing it for so long. It's a hard thing to get over. It's very difficult. You see, even if we make some advancement in Krishna consciousness, that is very difficult to get beyond. Still thinking, I need to do something for me. That's going to take a while for you to get beyond until we're fully surrendered to Krishna. And then that we're not going to be so concerned. If you really have this concrete, ironclad relationship with Krishna, and you know it and realize it, then you're okay, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about you see? So that means you can go out and instead of being self-conscious, you can be conscious of everyone else. Okay, does that make any sense? I'm conscious of helping everyone else. Now, someone might say, but are you being judgmental? Yes, sometimes we have to say, this person is in very good Krishna consciousness, and this person over here needs a little more love, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more help. You see? Yes, we have to do like that. It's not like we say, well, everyone is on the same platform. That is simply not true. On the ultimate eternal level, it is true. We are all part and parcel of Krishna. So, however, for the way we're all manifesting right now, in this time, place, and circumstance, we're not on the same level. Some people are remembering Krishna more than others. Those that remember Krishna more than others should help the others remember Krishna more. But to do that, you might have to discriminate a little bit and realize that someone may or may not be advanced properly. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people want to throw that at us. You know, they say, well, are you thinking you're better than? No, we're not. We're thinking we're lower than. We're thinking that everyone is a devotee of Krishna. Well, we know that. We can understand that. However, we have to discriminate. This person needs more help than this other person. It's like a doctor. Doctor in a battlefield. The doctor on the battlefield is going through patients, and I think they're doing that some with the COVID-19 patients. And doctor only has so much time, so he has to discriminate. This person here is about to die. There's not much I can do for him. This person here, there's hope. So the doctor has to discriminate. So the devotee has to do the same thing. This person here is inimical, they're envious, and I'll try to help them. But this person here really is showing some signs that they can become a very nice bhakti yogi. So therefore, I'm going to put a bigger share of my love and attention into this person. That makes perfect sense. We have to discriminate a little bit like that. So Narada Muni says such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So we should pay attention to when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, when we read Shastra, it's good to take it and instead of just reading it and going on, which we'll have a tendency to do, and you can do that sometimes, but it's very rewarding for you to take a sentence at a time and step through it and learn from it. This is a very important sentence here. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. This is where we want to go. We want to become purified men and women who are thoroughly honest. Those who hear and sing and accept this philosophy, it's going to be accepted that you're honest. You see, how can you become a preacher, or how can you be a devotee of Krishna if you're not honest? See, we should be honest. Truth is one of the pillars of religious life. What is it? Which regulative principle, if you break the regulative principle, which one destroys truth?
Gambling.
Very good. You get a gold star, Dr. Chris. I'll have to mail it to you. There goes your gold star. Exactly, gambling. So truthfulness is one of the 4 pillars of spiritual life. You've got cleanliness, mercifulness, truthfulness, and austerity. So it's like the 4 legs of the table. If you take away one of those legs, the table falls over. So we've got to maintain all of that. So honesty must be there. Truthfulness must be there. Otherwise, when people find out that you're not truthful, well then, I don't know if I want to listen to your preaching anymore. How do I know when you're telling the truth? So people who talk and sprinkle in a little bit of non-truth, I don't know if I want to hear any of what they say, right? I have to pick through it. If you're giving me a meal laced with poison, how do I know how to pick around the poison? So we must, the devotee, the Vaishnava must always remain truthful. I thought it was very interesting that Narada Muni pointed that out. All right, I'm going to go into the purport. Very interesting purport. Prabhupada wrote this. This is in the first canto. So he actually wrote this sometime back in the 50s. So very interesting, Prabhupada's outlook on the world at that time. So are there any questions or comments before I get into the purport?
Yes, I have something to add.
Yeah.
In the Satya Yuga, I believe all 4 of these legs of a table, as you said, or legs of the bowl of Dharma, I believe, is like a truthfulness, austerity, and these things you named, that only one of these legs stands in the current Yuga, that they were lost progressively over the ages due to probably historical events.
Right. And we, in this ISKCON movement, are establishing those legs back to balance society. That's the goal. Some people wonder, what is with these regulative principles? So, well, we want to reestablish a class of people who are truthful, clean, merciful, and austere. And when I say austere, I don't mean that you just go live in a tree or something. You see, or we're not asking people to live under a tree or be like a bird and live in the tree. No. But there's only so much that you need. Don't over endeavor for something far more than you need. Accept what it takes for you to do your service to Krishna and take care of your family and your health, your health and the health of your family. Don't go overboard. That's austere. Austere means I'm accepting what I need. Jesse, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
May I interject again?
Please do.
I meant to comment on this sentence you reiterated. It's one of my favorite selections of verses I've ever heard. It like expresses to me like the innocence of a uneducated poet trying to be transcendental poet, but he doesn't know about Krishna. And so when he discusses things in all honesty, like he's trying to say, there's something I'm keen on, but I can't express because I don't know Krishna. It's probably this, it might be that. Niti, niti, not this, not that. So therefore, he's trying to honestly, sincerely approach the Supreme. He's like an uneducated poet. Do you catch my drift?
Yes. Yeah.
So this is how I like relate to like musicians and artists, even though they're not expressly talking about God, they're trying to express that intangible aloofness about God that's so attractive in their art.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. People that are artists, that would include musicians, poets, whatever, they do many times, most of the time I would say, they feel some inspiration from within to express something. They don't always know what that is. It's like many musicians, they will write songs, and the songs don't seem to mean a whole lot. It's just like there was one musician, he was a good friend of George Harrison's, and I can't remember his name right now. He's left his body now, but he was very, very, very famous. And anyway, so he had just come out with a hit song, and so he was being interviewed, and the interviewer wanted to know what's the meaning of that song. And it was Tom Petty. I just remember Tom Petty. And Tom Petty said, "Look, it doesn't have to mean anything. I'm just trying to get a song down. I have feelings. I don't know how to express those feelings, so I write. Sometimes it has some meaning, sometimes it doesn't." You see, so a lot of times they just have this feeling, but I don't know. If you have an educated feeling, in other words, if you have a feeling about Krishna, an educated feeling about Krishna, you can write some poetry. We've seen Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur. These were elevated souls. They had this feeling to write, to express about Krishna, and they had the knowledge and the education to do so. And who can estimate how many lives have been saved by the writings of Narottam Das Thakur, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, so on. See? So, or artists who have this feeling and they can paint, but it's an educated feeling. It's not a speculative thing. But actually, that's a good point, Elijah. Many people, they do feel this intensity. They don't know how to put it into words or into painting or whatever. So sometimes it comes out like mishmash, gobbledygook.
But sometimes it's an honest effort to reach out to that thing that they don't know is personal yet. It's like a love song to this idea that they have that they don't know. It correlates to what they've been searching in their soul.
I agree 100%. It's honest. They really would like to connect, to reach out, and they'd like to share. They have this feeling, and they'd like to share it with you, but they just don't know the words, but it's an honest attempt. Yeah, I agree 100%. So keep in mind that Prabhupada is writing this sometime in the 50s. Prabhupada says this is a qualification of the great thinkers to pick up the best, even from the worst. It is said that the intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stalk of poison, should accept gold even from a filthy place, should accept a good and qualified wife even from an obscure family, and should accept a good lesson from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. Now, let's analyze what he's saying. Prabhupada said it's a qualification of the great thinkers to pick the best even from the worst. When you become a great thinker, in other words, a great thinker means you know the science of God. At least you know the philosophy, you know the basics of the philosophy. And in knowing that, you know the difference between personalism and impersonalism. So you know enough that you can pick up some benefit even from people, as Prabhupada says here, pick up the best even from the worst. So there may be sometimes people might say things in the mundane world, but because of your constant thinking of Guru and Krishna and your mission to help save the world, you may, even though they may not mean it, you can hear it in such a way that it comes through as a valuable message to you. I think I told you last time, I was out at the park and I was talking with a gentleman out there. He seems to be homeless, but I don't know for sure. And anyway, I said something to him. We had this nice greeting, and from his reply, I felt like, wow, that's something that I need. I'm gonna use it for a class title. I'm not gonna tell you what it is yet because I don't want to spoil it. So, but I heard that, and I thought later on, wow, even from this guy who was kind of a rough-looking character, definitely, obviously not a very educated man, and obviously not a very spiritually minded person. But from what he said, I could tell, wow, I feel that Krishna is speaking through you. You see? Now, if he had said, hey, buddy, what do you say we go get a beer? I wouldn't think, oh, wait a minute, I think Krishna's speaking through you. You see what I mean? So if you're a great thinker or even a good thinker, you can be able to tell, you should be able to tell when Krishna is speaking through these people, okay? If your mind is giving you a little bit of trouble, like Radha Sundari is giving her husband right now. If your mind is giving you some trouble and you're looking for an opportunity to embrace Maya, then you may hear things that someone says and you think, oh, this is inspiration. You may think, you may not think Krishna is talking to you, but you may feel like the universe is trying to tell you that you should do some nonsense. I'm thinking you probably wouldn't want to blame it on Krishna, but we could sure blame it on the universe. You know, that's what the universe...
Blame it on the rain.
Blame it on the rain. Or, yeah, I know this is what the universe wants me to do. Why? Because my mind is telling me so. So this is very interesting. I've heard Prabhupada use this before. When he's talking about an intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stalk of poison. He should accept gold even from a filthy place. So, you know, Prabhupada has said many times, if you're going someplace and you see some gold, real gold, and it's in a very contaminated place, very filthy. So the gold is still gold. You should pick it up immediately, cleanse it off, and you have pure gold. So we should think like that. Something valuable we get, we pick it up, even if it's in a contaminated place. So does that make any sense? This is a strong point. Is everybody understanding?
I believe that's what Freddie was referring to last time.
Yeah, yeah. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone in every place without exception. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. While preparing this commentation, I'm gonna wait before I go on with this. Let me talk about what he is saying here. But a saintly person is far above the level of an ordinary man. Now, here we go. Some people of the day's thinking may not want us to say things like that, but isn't it a fact? What do I mean by that? The saintly person is always looking, because he's in a clean place, he's in an honest place, he's in a merciful place in his mind. He's always looking, how can I help people? How can I distribute the absolute truth for your benefit? My benefit is okay. I'm already taken care of. I've come to the realization that I'm an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Godhead. And I'm okay with my relationship with God. So let me see if I can help you some. So coming from a place of honesty, from a place of mercy, from a place of cleanliness in mind and habits, and so on, and from a place of austerity. In other words, the devotee, the saintly person is not, as Prabhupada likes to use the term shobam, showy. Let me show the world that I'm hip or rich or whatever. You see what I mean? Because he's coming from a place like this, he can help people. Because he's honest, clean, merciful, austere, he's believable. People like this are believable. So in this way, someone who has this transcendental literature and is following in this atmosphere of mind of being truthful, clean, austere, merciful, then he can distribute these transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, and people will accept what they're saying. You see what I mean? If at least intelligent and sincere thinking people will. If you're not situated like that, then those who are insincere might accept what you're saying. And they accept it for today, and then later on, they're going to look for something else more fulfilling. You see what I mean? So it's imperative for the preacher to be situated in a situation where he's thinking and behaving and living in a clean, austere, honest, and merciful way. Therefore, we have the regulative principles. These are called the regulative principles of freedom. Now, some people say, how can regulations be freeing? So in the material concept, they're not. In the spiritual concept, they are, because they free you from the material desires and material actions. They free you. You can act in a world without the restrictions of having to gratify your senses in something that is dishonest, unclean, unmerciful, and not so austere. Does that make any sense? Now, at this time in the 50s, Prabhupada says, while preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend, China, has attacked the border of India with a materialistic spirit. Very poetic. We have practically no business in the political field, yet we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. The reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness, and every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple, and there was no question of diplomatic diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, India and China, over land which is not very suitable for habitation. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. But due to the age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is due to the issue in question. But this is due not to the issue in question, in other words, whatever they say they're arguing about, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop glorification of the name, fame, etc. of the Supreme Lord. Yes, when people want to take God out of school, prayer out of school. So yeah, we're wanting to push God further away. We don't want God meddling in our lives. So I don't want you to push your God on my children in school. Why? Because none of us understand God, and your God is just a political whatever. At least I'm seeing it as that. And my God is a political statement. Or the people who say there is no God, that's their political statement. So, therefore, there is a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. So Prabhupada has said this many times, it's the duty of every Indian, especially every Indian. So then once the Westerners have heard this message, it becomes your duty. It becomes your duty to speak this to everyone that you encounter, you see, to the degree that you can, you see, according to time, place, and circumstance. Of course, you can't just go around telling everybody you see, you can't just start preaching to them, or can you? Depends on your situation. If you're in the renounced order, yes, you can. If you're a Grihastha businessman, no, you can't. But you can do it whenever, according to time, place, and circumstance. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. Prabhupada is blaming India for keeping this science of Krishna consciousness within India. It didn't leak out of India. And why? Because India didn't take the science out of the country. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart. And naturally, the people in general will follow them. The mass of people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change of heart of the leaders only, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature conveying transcendental messages or reviving the God consciousness of the people in general and re-spiritualizing the world atmosphere is fraught with many difficulties. You see, Prabhupada is not in the thinking that, well, I'm the greatest thing that's ever happened. You know, I'm not the greatest spiritualist. He's recognizing that he has, from his vision, that he has so many frailties in spreading this movement, this knowledge all over the world. From our side, we could see what frailties did he have? He was perfect in every way. Those of us who knew him, those of us who have read his books, we can see Prabhupada was perfect in every way. From his side, though, he felt like, I'm so frail, and how do you say? And I'm fraught with so many difficulties. You see, Prabhupada didn't think, yes, this is me they're dealing with, I'm going to go out and conquer the world. No, he's thinking my guru has given me an instruction and I will dedicate my life to trying to accomplish that. So Prabhupada goes on, our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail. And there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration and the leaders of society will still accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. When there is fire in a house, the inmates of the house go out and get help from the neighbors, who may be foreigners. And yet, without knowing the language, the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need, even though not expressed in the same language. This is a huge point that Prabhupada is making. In times of great difficulty or danger, even though people may not speak the same language, this can be communicated. You see, it's like if someone that doesn't speak your language is telling you, no, stop, and they're urgently telling you that something is wrong, then you can understand something is wrong here. See, so this describes the situation that we're in right now. There is something wrong. What's wrong? The world is going, as they say, to hell in a handbasket. We're in deep trouble. Kali Yuga is getting heavier and heavier. People are getting further and further and further away from God. They're getting more and more and more into illusion. Technology is aiding that. So all of a sudden, our world that's been feeding us so much enjoyment has put on the brakes. So here we are, we find ourselves, we can't even hardly go out. You see, we may be able to go to a park, but if there's people there, we have to get away from them. It's dangerous to go anywhere. We're starting to get a taste that this world that we always thought was here for our gratification is no longer here for our gratification. So now I have to look somewhere else for my gratification. Somebody took away the world, you see. The world that was giving me food, toilet paper. It's amazing how people think. They're in danger. It seems like my world is going to shut down. I need to stock up on toilet paper. So is that a smart thing to do? No, you should think of other things, more important things first. Yes, get your toilet paper, whatever. But I wouldn't put that top on the list. There are many, many other things that you should be sure that you have before you get down, you work your way down to it. So we've got to have this spirit of urgency. Prabhupada always portrayed this spirit of urgency. You see, it wasn't like we got all the time in the world, let's just chant and kick back. Prabhupada was urgent. He felt that there's great danger in the world. And if we can get this message through these books and through Harinam Sankirtan, if we can distribute the holy name and this Krishna conscious philosophy widely throughout the world, that we can save it. We can save the world. for the next 9,500 years. There's this window of opportunity, the golden age of Lord Chaitanya. So therefore, he deputized all of us, his children and you, the grandchildren, spiritual grandchildren, to spread this movement. What do I mean by deputized? You've become empowered to do it. You see, you may be thinking like Prabhupada, but wait, I have so many frailties. I'm not able to do that. Well, that's natural for you to think like that. Prabhupada was feeling the same way. Yet, he knew that he was empowered by the instruction of his spiritual master, and he acted on that empowerment. You see? So, on the one hand, we realize, I can't do this. No, you can't. But you can let the empowerment of the disciplic succession work through you. You can do that. You can be a conduit for the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And you can, through being that conduit, you can spread it to who knows how many, millions of people. What is the limitation? Limitation is not from the empowerment that's coming through the disciplic succession. Limitation is on our ability to accept that and surrender to it. You see? And make it our mission. So, any questions or comments before I go on?
Hello, sir. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Did you have something to say, Dr. Freddie?
I just wanted to make a comment on the part that you were reading that Srila
I
Prabhupada wrote.
can't hear you. You have to speak louder.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me see. How about now? Can you hear me okay?
That's a little better.
Oh, okay. My room was a little bit echoey. But you were reading that that the border of India and China, people used to get along better because they were God conscious. And when I first read that about a year ago, it really struck an interest in me in terms of trying to find out in what way, China expresses its God consciousness, because I'm very interested in Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy. And I realized that there's a lot of information out there, but that in the present day has been oppressed, or we're just not able to get it because we don't have access to someone who's like an authority that can translate the information into English. And so I guess that's kind of a one special thing of having a teacher like Srila Prabhupada, who by his mercy was able to translate this very wonderful information like the Srimad Bhagavatam into English. Because at least for me, and I think for everyone who's in this room, the teachings really resonate with us, because you were mentioning that there are some people that may feel like if you try to impose your religion, you're making like a political statement, like if you make people pray at schools and things like that. I know that when I was growing up, the options that I had for religious life made me want to reject wanting to participate in a spiritual life or having any kind of God consciousness, because it just did not talk to my heart, and I felt that there was better things out there. And so essentially I came to like Buddhism, and then eventually found the Krishna consciousness, where it really speaks to my heart in terms of like the philosophy and like the really core, just to have Krishna as a person, as the absolute truth personified, And so I don't think all cultures for that express, let's say, well, I don't know, like I want to say like God consciousness, but there are some people that are very sectarian and they feel it's their way, and all the other people that believe in God actually don't believe in God. And so, I guess I wanted to just say that that I'm very thankful to Srila Prabhupada who was able to use this unqualified language, English, and give us all this literature. You know, so I thank you so much for sharing, sir.
Yeah, some good points that you've made there. One of them I want to address first. It's not the first point you made. One of them is religions have become politicized. Gee whiz, this is America. We're a white nation, and we have a white religion. No, not everybody feels that way, but it was like that for a long time. So our religion represents us, although it's not an American religion. It's not a white religion. The people who started that religion were not white people. You see, even Lord Jesus Christ himself, he wasn't Caucasian. So, there are people who would argue that, but they're basically from where he came, that there's no indication that he would be. So people have started to use their a long time ago, have started to use their religion as politics. The kings used their religion for the Crusades. It was a political crusade. Political meaning they were looking to conquer wealth. It was the Kshatriyas, the kings, who wanted to conquer in the Middle East. And in order to get everyone's approval to go conquer and plunder and pilfer and whatever, they did it in the name of religion. So the Crusades, the Holy Crusades to the Holy Land. You see, so it was politicized. So what has happened is that as America grew more and more and more from other outside religions and outside cultures, people started to see, well, wait a minute, you're Buddhist, we're Christian. I don't think we don't want you, you see. Anyway, there's somewhere along the line, there was a struggle in keeping other religions under the domain or under the control of Christianity. At some point, it seems like that was abandoned. And let's just abandon religion altogether. Now, I don't know exactly how this happened. I'm just seeing that this is what I've noticed in my lifetime. Instead of the propaganda that Christianity is the dominant religion of America, now it's like, well, there is no, we don't talk about it. We don't want in God we trust on the money. We don't want prayer in school. We don't want nativity scenes in Christmas, you see. So we've taken that out. And that's one way that we can't, that's one way of me stopping your religion, which may or may not be Christian, from dominating anybody else's, you see. So this is not very advanced religious thinking. Advanced religious thinking is that we are all servants of the Supreme Godhead. It shouldn't matter to me how you worship your God or who the personality of Godhead is that you worship. You see, it really shouldn't matter to me. We should all be able to understand. Prabhupada was making, we're all good God-fearing people, God-respecting people. And if we do that, there will be something saintly about us and about our decision-making process in dealing with one another, you see. So I may not like the type of food that you cook, and I may not like the way you dress, and I may not like this, and I may not like this about your culture and your religious culture, but I can respect you because you're a man of God. See what I mean? So Prabhupada is pointing out here that we've lost that. We don't have that common denominator anymore of God. That's disappeared. You see? So in other words, as we advance in Kali Yuga, God is being stripped out of everything. So rather than me respecting you for whatever God consciousness you have and determination to worship God, however it is that you determine that He is, that is all going away. We're pushing that away. We don't want to put so much emphasis on God in the world. You see? Why? Because I basically want to make decisions that are ungodly. You see what I mean? I want to campaign for the rights for abortion. Now, if I'm very religious, how am I going to get away with that? You see what I mean? For me, that's kind of a political statement or a political subject. So how can I be for that if I'm also for the laws of God? You see what I mean? So it's for my benefit, for my political beliefs. If I can kind of push down the importance of God in my decision-making process. You see? If I take God out of the scenario, then I can fight for someone's right to kill their unborn children. You see, because it's not a question of it being for or against any religious. We're not making decisions based on religion. You see, we're making decisions based on what I think is your right.
That's a good point. Could I interject, please?
Oh, please do.
That reminds me, I've been on campus one time distributing transcendental literature, and there was this community college student lady who was distributing these like voter packets, and when you said that word like warriors for abortion rights, it's like that's who I saw, because she's like, I brought up religion instead of what she was talking about, and she's like, well, I'm spiritual, I'm not sure about God, but all this and that, because she was a Buddhist college kid. And I think she had like a tattoo that said, you can only, bad news, there's no saviors outside of yourself, but good news, you are your own savior. Something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Just see how how the consciousness has degraded. There's no saviors outside of yourself. You are your own savior. One person in San Antonio many years ago got into an argument when I was giving the Sunday feast lecture, saying, we, me, I, you, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So I don't need a guru. I am the one I've been looking for. I am the one I've been waiting for. So in other words, that may sound very new agey, very trendy, and a lot of people would say, yeah, right on, because it sounds, wow, that's like freedom. In other words, if I am my own guru, then I can decide what I can do and what I can't do. I write my own rules, which means my principles can be whatever I say they are. And not only that, but I can change them. You know, this same guy, he used to come around and we would get into a spar once in a while. They wanted to throw him out of the temple, but I said, no, let it stay. This is fun. You know, this is good to spar with people like this once in a while. And, you know, he would come around and he would be talking about something different the next time I would be there. And I would remember, well, last time I was here, you were saying that this is the truth, and now you've got a whole new truth. See, this is the difference from being your own guru and your own God, your own savior. You can change what is the truth anytime you want to. You know, whatever influence is coming in to you from the outside. See, it's not an influence from the inside, as people like to say. You listen to the inner voices. Well, the inner voices are in your mind, and you got them from the internet or from the news or from some rock and roll or I guess they don't do rock and roll anymore. You know what I mean? From some outside illusory influence gets into my mind. It happens all the time. And now I think this is my inner voice. You know, I don't want to surrender to Guru and Krishna. I'm not looking to take shelter of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. You see? It's a heck of a lot more fun for me if I can just listen to the voice inside, which basically is just my mind, my desires. You see? Now, until I get purified, my desires are not going to become purified. But if we think, well, I'm purified now, so I can make purified decisions and I have purified desires without any God, then well, I'm just wrong. I'm fooling myself. Another thing that you said, Dr. Freddie, about Chinese culture. Chinese culture basically came from India. I mean, everything did. This civilization, civilization as the world knows it, started in India. Now, some people will argue with that because that's not what's been taught in school. But there is strong evidence, not only in Shastra, but other places as well. However, let me point out, Lord Buddha had a tremendous influence in Asia. He had a tremendous influence in China. Lord Buddha came from India. That's a known fact. All martial arts came from India. It was the dharma of the Kshatriya, the duty of the warrior. So the martial arts, as they went towards the east from India into China, we had things like, I believe, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, different things like that, which are very similar. They're much more similar to the type of martial arts that the Kshatriyas in India knew. And by the time it gets to Japan, you can see, like in karate, there's a difference. They're similar. A lot of people can see that there's a great similarity. But if you know something about martial arts, you can see that there's a tremendous, and you do, Dr. Freddie, there's a tremendous difference between karate and Kung Fu. You know, karate is much more hard. You know, whereas Kung Fu is more.
One is without weapons.
Huh?
One is without weapons.
Right. Yeah. Empty hand. It means actually empty hand. Fighting with an empty hand. So, so what my whole point of saying that is we see that as the culture came from India and as it spread, it started to mutate a little bit. So, whereas karate, jujitsu, these things, they're similar. Actually, they have their origins in India from the Kshatriyas of olden times.
I wonder if, did you ever practice martial arts, sir?
I can't hear you.
Did you ever practice martial arts? Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Say again.
I wonder if you ever practiced the martial arts.
If what?
Are you a martial artist? His mic's
yeah.
been low.
Way back in many years back, I was very active in boxing and martial arts, and yeah, long time ago. By the way, speaking of China, they have located the man, the very person who started this coronavirus. They found the original person, and his name is Ah Chu.
Really, Guru Dave?
Got to have a laugh once in a while. They lighten up here. Come on.
That's true. That's a good one.
I thought that was funny when I heard it, but then
It was funny, Guru Dave. It was funny.
I thought it was funny.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
tough room. This is as bad as Krishna Cove in the flesh. So, all right. Did I answer your question, Dr. Freddie?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very much. I don't know
Okay.
if you can hear me very well. Can you hear me okay?
Little bits, yeah.
I can hear you fine,
It's
Dr.
just
Freddie.
really
It's just
low.
it's like if you have a volume bar somewhere, you just go it's a little bit, that's all it needs.
Let's see. Okay.
Here, I'll do that. Maybe you'll hear me better. Can you hear me better
I
now?
want to say, yes, yes. Thank you so much. I know that and when I was studying about Buddhism, they had the incredible landscape that is the Srimad Bhagavatam. They have Mount Meru, they have all the Gandharvas and all the Asuras, and I want to learn more about that. And the Srimad Bhagavatam has all the information available there. And so it's almost like it's the same, well, it is the same culture coming from India.
Yeah.
Just changing. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. It changed in time, you see. So, all right. I'm going to move along and read a little bit more. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it is a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques and not with the language. You can see Prabhupada is putting deep thought into these words. You read that again. This same spirit of being able to communicate this urgency, in spite of our differences in language and cultures, the same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of the Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it is a technical science of spiritual values. And thus, we're concerned with the techniques and not with the language. We are concerned with the techniques, and we can translate it into any language necessary. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success. Then, when there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general all over the world, there is no wonder that a person or nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. Well, you can give a class practically on every sentence of this purport. Think about that in your everyday life. What's going on around you? When there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general, that all over the world, but people that you come in contact with, there is no wonder why there's an attack or some disagreement. Why? Because of materialistic activities. So, if we can establish this science of God consciousness, the science of putting God first and foremost in our consciousness, therefore, in our decision-making process, our mind and our thoughts, therefore our activities, will be less materialistic. And our quarrel amongst each other will diminish, if not disappear. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Prabhupada is talking about is there's no wonder that a person or a nation will attack another on slight provocation. We see that in this age. I think everyone has noticed that. Sometimes people around you become very irritated without very much provocation whatsoever. So therefore, you have one person who's being attacked or whatever, accused by another person, And they're thinking, what was the provocation? What did I do? So now I'm all upset, and now I want to get back at you. So it's like in the mode of passion is like fire. The whole thing catches on fire. So now you have two people that are dealing with each other in the modes. So whenever there's for the most part, not always, whenever there's some sort of anger, there's the mode of passion. Now, if there's anger because you see one person, maybe even one devotee who's mistreating another devotee, you may become a little angry, you see. Still, this anger is not good. You see what I mean? You can go there, then you have to get back out of it. But being driven by making decisions based on some anger, you're just in the modes. You're in the mode of passion. It will drag you into the mode of ignorance. It is not good for you. That is the rule of this age of Kali, or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. In many countries, there are bodies appointed by the state to detect and censor obscene literature. This means that neither the government nor the responsible leaders of the public want such literature. Yet, it is in the marketplace because the people want it for sense gratification. This is a strong point. The people actually want this degraded literature because they see they're desperate to gratify their senses, and they see this as this is a hope. One thing is the thing that pops into my mind, the pursuance that people, the amount of time, resources that people put into gratifying their senses is like at an all-time high. Why? Because people have more time now. You see, I can remember in bygone ages, a lot of people worked. They had some job. Actually, for a long time, people worked at home. They had some cottage industry of things that they made, or they were farmers. They grew things, milk farmers, vegetable farmers, fruit farmers, whatever. And people worked all day. And in the evening, I can remember when I was a boy, way back in the last century, people in the evening like to sit down on their front porch and just kind of chill, just be. They'd sit on their front porch and maybe chat with one another. The family would be there. Sometimes the older people would take some knife and sharpen the knife very sharp, and they'd take a piece of cedar. The cedar's got a very attractive aroma. And then they would sit there, and as they chatted with their wife and children, they would whittle off a fine piece of this cedar. And they would continue to do that until they had some, very slowly, not in any hurry, and they would end up with a stack, or some amount of this fine cedar shavings. And they would put it into a cloth sack and put it into their closet. It gave off a nice aroma. And also, I think there's certain bugs that it repels and whatever. Put it in their drawers, make sachets out of them, or put it in various parts of the house. And so even in their leisure, they're doing something for their benefit. And I can remember people would just sit and peacefully whittle very slowly, and the pieces of cedar, because the knife was so sharp, would just be very fine, like hairs, you see. So now to us nowadays, that sounds totally boring, doesn't it? But they didn't have the internet. They didn't have all this outside stimuli. They just had the family. They were tired, they were resting after dinner, and they were enjoying each other's association, discussing what they did during the day and their plans for the next day. You see? So that was a different time. So we don't have this today. They have more time. You don't have to work all day, getting up before the sun's up to milk your cow, and then going out into the garden and working all day, and then maybe going several miles by horseback or walking into some town to get supplies, and then walking back, cooking over a wood stove. You see, it took a lot of time just to get through the day. Now we have all these modern conveniences and we have more time, but we don't notice that we have more time. People are in as much of a hurry now, much more so than I ever remember in my life. When I was younger, people didn't seem to be in so much of a hurry. Now that we have all these modern conveniences, people have more time and they're in much more of a hurry, and no one seems more rested. They don't seem like, so there's no benefit. I remember in the 1960s, there was a move, especially in America, to sell electronic appliances. And part of the sales pitch was, you're going to have more leisure time. You're going to have things that are going to help you cook faster, so you'll have more leisure time. Computers were supposed to give you more leisure time. They have not. None of these things have given us more leisure time, because I don't see it in the world. People feel like they're struggling harder and harder.
We're headed nowhere fast.
Huh?
I said we're headed nowhere fast.
Yeah, we're going nowhere fast. But you're buying into the concept and you're spending your money thinking you're going to get some gratification, and you're feeding the economy. See? It's interesting to see now that the economy in the whole world, but the American economy, now that it's stopped, now we can see how much we depend on this machine to keep running. You see? It's pretty much stopped, and for the most part. And so we all know this can't go on for very long. See, we're trapped in this in this culture that we've built, this culture of consumerism. We've become prisoners of it. We have to continue to consume, or else the things that we consume will dry up, and we can't have that, you see. So now would be a good time to be living on the farm with a cow and a garden, you see. Those people that are living in such a way, they're not affected by this.
That's a good point.
So what?
So that's a good point.
Yeah, they're not affected.
Yeah.
You see?
Got to go back to that agrarian lifestyle.
If we can reestablish the agrarian lifestyle, everyone will be free. Does it mean you'll spend more time in your garden? Yes. Yes.
That's a good thing.
That's a good
I like the
thing.
sound of that.
I like it too.
You'll, as a matter of fact, you'll probably do what most people do. You'll start out with a certain spot of land, and then the next year you'll expand it because you think of other things you want to grow. You might want to get into various flowers. Various flowers spread out through the garden will repel pests and things like that. There's a whole science of this organic gardening that's been pretty much lost. But your life benefits from it. I remember going to my garden And every evening when I'd get home from the office, I would go out and see what's new in my garden. And it was always a treat. I had to work hard to keep up with my garden. In that, I had to work hard to keep it harvested. It was giving me so much vegetables. I had to pick them and cook them, eat them, give them to my neighbors, give them to the other devotees. It was a lot of work and very rewarding, you see. It was very rewarding every time I'd show up at somebody's house. One of my friends, my devotee friends that lived nearby, they were thinking, oh, goody, what did you bring? Did you bring any more of those big tomatoes? You know, so this is a good life. It's a very good life, the agrarian way of life. All right, Prabhupada goes on. We're about finished with this. The people in general want to read. That is a natural instinct. But because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures, meaning sensual literatures. Under the circumstances, transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also it will supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy. But we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. Prabhupada uses this analogy again and again. When you have jaundice, if you eat anything sweet, it's so bitter that it makes your jaw hurt. Very, very uncomfortable. Yet, the cure for jaundice is sugar. If you take sugar candy, like rock candy, you know, there's a whole process for making rock candy, if you know about it. It's based on basically sugar. So, but if you take sugar, it cures jaundice, but it tastes terrible when you have jaundice. After the jaundice subsides and gets better, then the sugar tastes like sugar candy again. So Prabhupada says, similarly, let there be systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, the other literatures, which are catering poison to society, will then automatically cease. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults. For it is recommended by Sri Narada Muni, who has very, very kindly appeared in this chapter. Then can you analyze the mood that Prabhupada is in when he's writing this? Very poetic, meditative. So Prabhupada is saying that this jaundiced or diseased condition of the general people in Kali Yuga can be eradicated. It can be cured by this Krishna conscious philosophy, which we're doing. We're spreading Bhagavad Gita. Not so many people will want to read as much as in bygone days. So we go to the airwaves. We're using the internet. And also, very important, that we spread it one-on-one, people that we meet. So when we can get together again, person to person, then we can continue bringing new people into our group and discussing more and more this Srimad Bhagavatam. So, are there any questions or comments as we wrap it up?
I have a question, Gurudev.
Yeah.
So here at the in the purport, this last line where Prabhupada is stating, even though it is now presented with so many faults. Is he speaking? He's speaking about the Srimad Bhagavatam?
He's speaking about himself. He's talking about his faults. He's not talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. He's thinking, I'm just an old man. I don't even hardly know your language. You know, I studied some English, and I'm struggling very difficult to master the language, and I'm old, and I'm tired, you know, and I'm in a foreign land. Or actually, he was still in India at this time. I'm going to a foreign land. He could tell he's elderly, and he doesn't know the language. So there's he perceives those as faults that he has, not that he's thinking that the Srimad Bhagavatam has any faults.
I thought maybe what he was referring to was the numerous transliterations of Srimad Bhagavatam that are bogus and impersonal, or, you know, for that matter.
That's there too, but that's not what he's alluding to.
Okay.
At this, but there are many, although Bhagavad Gita has been more misrepresented than Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, Bhagavatam is such a big work, and even the pseudo spiritualists, they haven't gone after Srimad Bhagavatam as much as they have Bhagavad Gita. You see, Bhagavad Gita is easier for someone to try to manipulate Krishna's words for their own popularity or for whatever. Just like people manipulate the words of the Bible for their own purpose, political purpose or whatever. You see. And therefore, Prabhupada wanted to present Bhagavad Gita as it is.
Right.
As Krishna's saying it. And Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita as it is. You see. Give it to you without any slant, without any spin. You see. No exaggeration and no fabrication. Just the straight sauce.
May I interject here?
Please do.
Is someone else talking?
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be much a Herculean task of, I'm sure, atheistic will to get through 18,000 verses of this thing and still be, all right, now I've translated into this language, now to apply my agenda.
Right. Yeah, they're not so eager to attack Srimad Bhagavatam for their purposes. But Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses, yeah, that I'll attack. I'll go for that. You know, some of the Bhagavad Gita translations are like in small little books. Previous people. It's, in other words, they should be entitled Bhagavad Gita as I want it to be. Or I want you to believe it is, not as it is. So, and there's been numerous people that have done that. But it's
Prabhu,
yeah.
Jivananda, can you hear me? This is Bob.
Hey, Bob. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, how you doing?
I'm doing okay for an old guy.
You look great. I really appreciate tonight's conversation. Something I just wanted to comment, just about the last bit that we've been talking about in terms of reading and literature and how important that is. And I remember, way back when I first came on to this path and started hanging out and listening, and that was like almost my first door. I would call it the first entry door into Krishna consciousness was hearing and of course reading. But the thought that the books that we read and what we surround ourselves with are actually part of our environment, and we're only as good as our environment is, and so I I think some of us were, just a while back, there was a teacher that was, you met him actually. He was from New York. He was from upstate New York. His name was Raghunath. You remember? He gave a talk
Yeah.
at the temple.
Yeah.
And he did a class at the Baba Center. And I remember some of us were there. You guys were there, right? And he said something that really struck me. And he said, be careful what goes into your ears. Be cautious what goes into your ears. And also be careful what comes out of your mouth. Those two things were very, very important. I just think it's,
Extremely.
yeah, very, very. And, I think we're very lucky. I mean, the association is, as I become a little more mature, like I feel like I'm still a fledgling, but as I'm becoming more mature in this practice and Krishna consciousness, I realize that association is so dynamically important. It's probably the number one important thing. And of
That's
course,
exactly right.
and it includes our books and all of what. Something also that I didn't quite catch it, but something you read at the last, something about the techniques of practice, which I thought was an interesting statement, which
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that meant, other than the fact that would that mean the actual practice of our chanting, right? The japa practice, is that what he meant by that?
Yeah, and congregational hearing and chanting.
Okay.
Our technique, the bhakti technique. And I'd like to go back to something that point that you made before I forget, that Raghunath Prabhu pointed out. I remember back in the 70s, I lived for a time at Gita Nagari, our farm up in the Amish country in Pennsylvania, which is still there today. And we had all this. We had this world that we're talking about. Cows. We had a herd of wonderful cows and gigantic organic garden. And so we would have some really interesting, intimate discussions in the evenings. After we finished our evening meal, we would sit together, some of us, sometimes in bigger groups, sometimes in smaller groups, and we would just have these discussions. And I can remember Burijan Prabhu, my godbrother, and he was talking about that very subject, about how we have to be careful what comes in the ear. You can see something and not be as influenced by it, but what goes in the ear, it kind of situates itself in the mind. And so his point was, if you put garbage in your head through your ear, after some time, garbage will start coming out of your mouth, which is an important point. You can kind of tell where people are on the devotional platform by what they're saying. If they've got garbage coming out of their mouth, you can see, well, I can see what's going in your head. I can tell where you're living. If what's on their mind is spiritual, if it's the name, forms, pastimes, attributes of Krishna and Krishna's devotees, then you can see, I understand what you do with your time. If it is not, then you can see, oh, I can see where your interest is. You've got things that are, because you can see what's coming out of someone's mouth. So this is very important. Now we have the influence of the internet, and the internet not only gets in your head through your ear, it gets in through your eye at the same time. And so it's very easy to be poisoned by things that are not this type of literature. Let me go back to the verse here. Things that are not literature, which is full of the descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord. You see? Now, some people say, well, Gee whiz, if I spend a lot of my time, if I spend too much time in those literatures about God, I'm going to get really bored. That may be true in the beginning, but as we can see in all of our lives, it's becoming more and more and more attractive to us. See, we're becoming not only more and more attracted, we're becoming more and more attached. Talking about the glories of Krishna and Krishna's devotees, Krishna's pastimes, attributes. See, so that's a good point. And another point you made is that yes, association is extremely important. Right now, we have association, but it's just us over the airways, over the internet. You see, that's all we have. So when we get back to normal, whatever normal will be, once we get through this, I think we'll have a much bigger appreciation, I would hope we would, of having each other's personal physical association. So are there any questions or comments? We've been going on for a pretty good while, so.
I just wanted to share a last little analogy regarding what
Okay.
we were talking about with freedom. And I mean, I use it, it really touched me. And I use it when I try to explain to people why we follow 4 principles that a lot of people think are crazy. And, you know, it's like, I just think it's good to share. When you're driving a car, you don't want to be in a car if you don't know how to drive it. It's scary when you first learn how to drive, or when you first pick up an instrument, or anything you do. People think that they're impulses and that having no control is having control. But you don't have any freedom in a car until you master how to drive it, until you have control over it. So in the same way on our bodies, when we're being pulled by our minds and our senses, that's having no control, and there's no freedom in that. It's like the car. When you actually know how to drive it and you can control it, then you can go where you want to go. Then you have freedom. Then you can actually try to enjoy driving. Otherwise, it's just terrifying, and it's not a good trip. Anyway.
I agree. That's a good observation. When you learn how to drive, then you do get more free. There's more freedom in the experience of driving. You see, when you're learning how to drive, you're going down the road and you're like, really you have to concentrate. You can't look away from the road for a minute. You're afraid you'll go into the ditch. So you're kind of caught. You have to pay attention to that. After a while, you become expert and you can kind of relax, drive, and maybe look around at the scenery a little bit. Of course, we don't want to do too much, but we become a little bit more free in our driving experience. Like that in spiritual life too. In the very beginning, we have to drive our spiritual life. It takes a lot of concentration, a lot of discipline. Now that concentration and discipline will always be there, but after some time it becomes second nature, you see. So therefore, there is more freedom. You have more freedom, just like the driving. Once I get used to spiritual life and I forgot the word I was going to use. I'm having a senior moment, but I'm senior, so I can do that. But so that you can actually look outside of Srimad Bhagavatam. You can look outside of these things that do nothing but glorify the name, fame, forms, and pastimes of the Lord. But you're still going to see these things will remind you in some way of perhaps topics that you need to talk about, like how are people suffering in the world, you see? Rather than just looking at what's going on in this pandemic as news, the devotee can see it as, what is Krishna trying to tell us? You see, what can I learn from this? Is there a benefit? And is this something that Krishna is doing to help me, to help us in our desire to get back home, back to God? So, yes, let's be part of this revolution in spreading Srimad Bhagavatam from our mouth, books, and through our hearts in befriending people. I'm talking about honest befriending of people, taking people into our hearts and treating them as devotees. This is the revolution that Prabhupada started and that we're all part of. So, Govinda Madhav.
Could I add one more thing?
No, your time's up. Go
Was
ahead.
I a good entertainer?
Yeah, you were good. You can go ahead. You were so good, you can go ahead.
All right. I'm a moderator for this Facebook page, and this post that I'm approved was so relevant to what we were speaking about earlier.
Uh-huh.
I want to preface by saying you've brought up some interesting points about India and China that I were sitting on, that Buddha was, he wasn't necessarily encouraging everyone to be like atheists or impersonal, not in like the esoteric sense where like all this cosmology really relates back to the Bhagavatam with Krishna being the center. More like the peak of his religion is like the intellect.
Uh-huh.
And this post I confirmed is it's these quotes from these like famous scientists, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
And these are all about why well, like silliness of atheism, even though like there's like we could have all this book learning. So the first one goes, atheism is so senseless. When I look at the solar system, I see the Earth at the right distance from the sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light. This does not happen by chance. Isaac Newton.
Hmm.
Another one by Joseph Marie Comte de Maistre from the 1700s. In fact, quote, no man has ceased to believe in God before having decided that he should not exist. No book would produce atheism, and no book can restore faith.
Wow.
That's an interesting one. That's the sentiment I get a lot from these college kids, where they think we're all lords of our own destiny and we can believe in God, but that's your own shortcoming because you're a superstitious sentimentalist. But Joseph Marie says no book would produce atheism or restore faith. And God, no man has ceased to believe in God before having decided that he should not exist. So man just decides that he should not exist.
Hmm.
Another quote
Yeah.
is
And analyze why. I think he should not exist because he's an impediment in attempt to gratify senses.
it's a never an enlightened motivation.
Who is that author that wrote that?
Her name is Joseph Marie Comte de Maistre. Maybe it's a man. I think it's like a French philosopher in the 1700s.
Interesting.
Another one of these quotes. Have you heard of Francis Bacon?
Yeah.
He says, "A small amounts of philosophy lead to atheism, but larger amounts bring us back to God."
Ah, interesting.
And the last one is, atheism shows strength of mind, but only to a certain degree. That's Pascal. The one previous to that was really interesting. I think that the innocence of the transcendental world, with all these child gopas and everyone not pretending like Krishna isn't God, but worshiping him personally all the same.
Uh-huh.
In that these any amount of philosophy, not that like knowing that he's God anymore, would shake them in any way. Because he's not God in Krishna Loka, he's just Krishna.
Right.
And so any amount of philosophy, it's probably like the fall of like the first Gopa out of Vaikuntha, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
This small amount of philosophy leads to atheism, larger amounts bring us back to God, but like for that form of the jiva that fell from Krishna Loka by this small philosophy, thinking he could be like the Most High, this is a God complex covered by illusion that's keeping us from our
Yeah, it only
perceivable
takes a
reality.
little bit of philosophy to get me on that path of going away from Krishna.
I
All
think
right,
that
folks.
I
Well,
think that
according to the clock on the wall, did you have something further
yeah.
to say?
Yeah, I think that reminds me of why there's some dissent from people who think that we are like sentimental or superstitious, is that, or like waiting for a savior is pointless, is that we think that all of the reward for our piety comes back to us once we die, rather than waking up to a conscious spiritual world in our present moment, ever present, omnipresent moment.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see what's attractive about those philosophies that make you want to wait until you're dead to get it. Oh, that doesn't sound like a good bet to me. All right.
Thanks for
Well,
letting me share.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining in. What was that?
When you hear the music, that means the time's up.
All right. I heard the music.
Phasing you out.
You're a Krishna DJ.
Wait, it's not over. It's not over until the fat lady sings.
Right, exactly. Thank you so much, Jivananda Prabhu.
All right.
Gurudev.
Thanks all you guys for coming out. Appreciate you guys, Gurudev.
Thank you guys. Hare Krishna.
Did you like it, Bob?
Hare
Krishna.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Thank you for joining.
Hare Krishna.
Chris.
Hare Bol, everybody.
Bob.
Hare Krishna, Jesse.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Laura. Hi. Thank you for another successful virtual course. See you guys.
It was awesome. Thank you.
We just stopped recording, guys. Thank you, guys. Okay. So once I end this meeting, what are you trying to press here? Hey, you.